IKIM Inspirasi Inforia Islami. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you for being with me, Annie Zahura Abdul Aziz, your host for today's program Open Forum at IKIM Radio. And I welcome all listeners who are tuning into our program right now, either through our radio station and also through our Facebook page. Welcome to another episode of Open Forum. Alhamdulillah, with me, I have, lucky to have with me Professor Datuk Dr. Azizan binti Bahrudin. Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Annie. How are you?
Thank you. Alhamdulillah, Prof. Thank you for being with us on Open Forum. Let me just briefly introduce you to our listeners. Prof. Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharudin is currently the Director of Center for Civilizational Dialogue, University Malaya. And she's also our former Director General of IKIM. And she has contributed many on IKIM radio programs and also have talked about so many issues on dialogue, on unity, on sustainable development, and so many other research and also findings in terms of when we talk about this particular topic, especially Dato' today. So in today's episode, Dato', I think we are going to touch upon a very important topic, realizing the fact that we are in our, Merdeka month last year started last week, sorry, and last month started from 31st of August, and then now we recently celebrated our Malaysia Day. I think this topic is very much relevant and very important for us to keep on, creating that particular awareness among our people. When we talk about our topic for today, which is social cohesion, with the Malaysia. We are concentrating upon this area of social cohesion, unity. We're talking about how people need to get to know one another better, to understand one another better. Maybe, Datuk, you can share with our listeners as an introduction to our program, what is social cohesion and how is it different from unity that we've been talking about all this while, Datuk?
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafi anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. Thank you so much once again to Radio IKIM, Puan Annie Zahura, for inviting us to be with you today to share some thoughts, if you like, some reflections, on this topic, social cohesion with the Malaysia, I think it's a good question. What is the difference between unity and social cohesion? So far, we've talked less about cohesion, I think, but more on unity. And I think we touch on unity in a kind of superficial way, like we assume that people understands what it takes. We assume that it is there, but I think it's good that you try to draw the difference. So I think we, in terms of terminologies, I think it's generally accepted that social cohesion involves building shared values and communities of interpretation. What do you mean by that? I mean, we have different groups within a certain race, for example. But these different groups would have different interpretations of events, of concepts, of ideas, right? So scientific social cohesion would want these shared values to be happening even among people of the same race, of the same religion, for example, so that they might reduce disparities. In practical terms, this would result in reducing of disparities in wealth and income. This is a very critical point. And generally enable people to have a sense that they are engaged in a common enterprise, facing shared challenges, and that they are members of the same community. So in a sense, there is unity if there is cohesion, is it not? I mean, when we speak of unity, it be triggered in your mind this kind of idea. So social cohesion also refers to the strength of relationships, and I think this is also another critical point. How strong are our social relationships, and the sense of solidarity among members of a community. Yeah? At the moment, I think some of us watch television and we see how the UK population is mourning the demise of the Queen, right? So is that a
Yes.
kind of social cohesion? I think it is a kind of reflection of, you might argue, but
Mhm.
to have almost half a million people stand in mourning and in line to just see the coffin inside the Westminster Abbey at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I
Yeah.
think that's one indicator of social cohesion. And this social cohesion actually is the amount of social capital and community has. So if you have this kind of things that we've spoken about, then what we have is social capital. We
Mhm.
always speak of financial capital, right? We always
Yeah.
speak of human capital, for example, how much human labor is required to produce such and such goods, so that we can such and such growth, economic growth in the country. But I think we need to speak more about social capital and also community. The community will be more prosperous if such a capital is in place. So
Mhm.
a very good example of social capital existing is when crisis strikes, people will help those in need
Mhm.
immediately. Yeah, and I think we saw this. Was it last year or is it this year? I think last year that there were huge floods, unexpected floods, right? In like
Yes.
in Selangor, it was in Shah Alam. So
Mhm.
we saw many dramatic pictures, listened to dramatic reports. So I think social cohesion wise, does it exist in Malaysia? I think it exists. There's a healthy social cohesion, but
Mhm.
the moment we try to over rationalize, intellectualize it, and all that, then maybe the picture changes. But then again, each one of us is independent in that sense. We have our own minds, and if possible, let's not try to be too influenced by voices that forever speaks more negativities as opposed to positivities. Yeah. So
Mhm.
then, what is the opposite of social cohesion? Conflict, discord, dissension, which some people
Mhm.
say is abound, is bountiful in the social media. I don't know about that because I think that's another issue. We should watch out for how much attention we pay to the
Mhm.
negativities that comes out of social media. And you ask how is it different from national unity? So I think
Yeah.
national unity, by national unity, people refer to the uniting factors, uniting of various groups based on factors. What are the factors? We've just spelled it out, right? So
Mhm.
nationality refers to the uniting of various groups that have different social and cultural backgrounds into one physical entity. So that's the other
Mhm.
element. Unity occurs when there are differences to begin with. But
Mhm.
despite those differences, yeah, people can come together into one physical entity. So we are Malaysians. Our passport says we are Malaysians, even though we might say we come from different ethnic backgrounds. So integration, which is also spoken about a lot, is a process of uniting groups with different backgrounds into one entity bound by common norms, values, and interests. So nationality is a situation where people of diverse cultures, religions, language, political inclinations, social and economic systems are brought together to have a common goal. And the people have mutual understanding, love, and cooperation and trust among themselves. So some people might be cynical and say, yeah, we've heard this before, right? But then I think we can break down these huge sentences and concepts by saying that the moment you say differences, there is a responsibility for everybody who think they're different from the other to actually try to see what are the similarities. Because without the similarities, they will not be able to join forces with the other, right? So in
Yes.
Malaysia, we talk about T20, B40, and the rest M.
M40. Yeah.
That's right. So right now, it's not enough to merely qualify people in those terms. So what must exist is a kind of dialogue, top down, down bottom, and bottom up, top down, across the borders of these delineations, economy or culture, so that cohesiveness might come into being. Yeah, I think we
Mhm.
should. I think that's what I would say for the moment. So if this social cohesion does exist, then you would have national unity and integration, inshallah.
Interestingly, Dato, when you said that, we actually in terms of living together. We have been living together for so long. I think
Yeah.
our independence, we are in our 65th year.
Yes.
And when we talk about togetherness, when we talk about how important it is, you've mentioned about the factors. We need to focus on shared values,
That's right.
common enterprise, and aspect like social capital to look at this. But when we talk about the level of social cohesion, Dato',
Mm.
we see that there are phases where, in the history of our country, when
Mm.
you see ups and downs, there are somehow, we cannot deny there'll be
Mm.
conflicts around, but not as serious
Push that.
as other countries. Yeah, but we do understand it exists. So how have we actually improved in terms of our level of social cohesion,
Mm.
especially in, maybe 20 years ago? How do
Mm.
you perceive that, Atul?
Yes, again, I think you can put on the spectacles of darkness or spectacles of light. If you want to say we are better off than 20 years ago, I think that's true. If you
Mm-hmm.
say, but we do have these issues, yes, that's also true. But I think we should look at the positive side, because I think the government, to be fair, those
Mm-hmm.
in authority have taken so many measures to increase social cohesion. Just in the sphere of education, for example, do you remember beginning the year early 2000?
Mm-hmm.
There was this course called Tamadun Islam Tamadun Asia.
Yes.
Islamic civilization and Asian civilization taught
Mm-hmm.
compulsorily at university level, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then this is followed by courses on ethnic relations. So
Yes.
that, say, one thing we need to mention here, and I think people like universities and people like research institutes like IKIM should work on, is the lack of primary data. There's not enough data to
Mm-hmm.
sort of allow us to have a very clear indication of how far have we done better, how much have we done better since 20 years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
there are research projects done, and from
Mm-hmm.
what I have encountered before coming to this program, there has been progress. There has been improvements in
Mm-hmm.
the understanding, in the relationship. Probably not enough, but we are not worse off than
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago. And like you said, we also must be fair in terms of how the world has changed. Malaysian society, Malaysian economics and the economic system and the wealth gaps and all of that is highly dependent to outside forces as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, people are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. At
Yeah.
the first two of which is zero poverty and zero hunger, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but in the world also, the gap between rich and poor increases by the day.
Yes.
So there are complicated issues here, and
Mm-hmm.
also Malaysian system is highly dependent on the ecosystem of political situation and the trade situations like the world over. So I
Yeah.
think overall, we might want to share. There was this particular study done. I think first we've heard of the happiness index study, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Uh, yeah, this happiness index by statistical department. They carry, and this is for 2021, but they released it this year,
Mm-hmm.
and we were at our score was 6.48, 10 being the maximum.
Mm-hmm.
If your score is 10, you are the happiest nation in the world. So ours was 6.48, which is just inside the happy bracket,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is despite the pandemic, mind you. And you would
Mm-hmm.
imagine that the pandemic would have destroyed many good things in people's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yes.
not destroyed, disturbed balance in people's lives, right? So and we are high. Of course, some places are score higher, like in Wilayah Persekutuan Laban, the score was 9.29.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in Wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur is 7.77. In Selangor is 5.74. So we can break this even further down, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe investigate why in Selangor, because maybe we always had water disturbances, I don't know, in the water supply,
Or maybe the traffic.
the traffic jams, yeah, the pollution, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But overall, if you break down the categories of what make
Mm,
people happy, on the family side, we scored 7.23 average, spiritual
mhm,
7.21, social participation 6.45 because we are under lockdown, yeah, a
mhm.
lot. Housing and environment 6.39, working life 6.31 because we had to work from home, maybe there are issues there.
Yeah.
Education 6.3, public safety 6.2, culture 6.28, emotional well-being 6.15, and the thing we are least happy about is income, 6 only. But
Mhm.
still, we are not in the unhappy category. Meaning to say, we are doing good. There should be an element of gratitude. For Muslims, we say syukur. There has to
Yeah.
be a lot of, and if we study again the factors that affect cohesiveness and
Mhm,
happiness, spirituality, I think maybe in this program or maybe some other program we can go deeper how actually religion, especially Islam, how it encourages, yeah, actually social cohesiveness, and in the end after that social unity. So I think
mhm,
if you want to answer this question, what are the factors for how are we if we compare ourselves from 20 years ago, okay,
mhm,
considering that we suffered the pandemic and we are still at the tail end of it and all that, war in Ukraine. So
mhm,
we are not that bad. We are not in a bad situation compared to some other countries. Yeah.
mhm.
In the
Yeah.
world, we are number 35 in terms of happiness index. Out of
Mhm.
156 countries, we are number 35. How about that?
Yeah.
So that's the top, even better than 30%. You know,
Mhm.
so I think we have achieved much, and I think Malaysia should be proud that we have this very nice country. But of course, we have our problems. Of course, we have a
Yeah.
problem, and nobody denies that. It's
Yeah.
very easy to slide into that depressive mode, isn't it? And this
Yes.
is what I think we should support our colleagues out there, our NGO friends, our medical friends who are working very hard also to look at mental health situation. So
Mhm.
is that a factor in talking about social cohesiveness? But of course, because if people don't feel belong, no sense of belonging, that is a factor pressuring them
Mhm.
into depressive modes. Yeah,
Yeah.
feeling of not belonging to the country, and then feeling of being marginalized. And
Mhm.
and later when we speak about the study by the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, these are all spoken about. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we
But
are not that well, but we can do better, of course.
yeah, but we see that there are some people in the society who still uh, have this understanding that we used to be very much together. I mean, especially in the old days, we've
Yeah.
seen people talking about how they were close to their friends who are of different ethnic groups, different cultural background, different religion, way back maybe in the 70s, in the 80s, during those times. So, what I mean, this is a question that what are maybe the kind of formulas that existed at that point of time that
Mm.
make it special when we have better understanding, good relations with our neighbors of different cultural groups and so on. That what are some of these? Maybe you can,
I think,
you
yeah,
do dialogues, and I think these are some
yeah.
of the those that they share when they
Yeah,
talk
I
about.
belong to that generation that can say that, what you've
Mhm.
mentioned. I belong to that generation where we climbed mangosteen trees together, and we had
Yeah.
our non-Malay. I'm a Malay, we are Malays, right? And when we had our
Mhm.
non-Malay, non-Muslim friends come over for meals, and they would say the same.
Yeah.
Uh, the Indian friends, the Chinese friends, they invite us over, and there would not be any fear
Mhm.
that what we eat at their place is something that is not halal, for example. Meaning
Mhm.
to say, there was at that time genuine respect,
Mhm.
genuine
Yeah.
acceptance of the
Mhm.
other, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
people who are not like us, they are the other. So
Yeah.
at that time, I think there was maybe we were a young nation, we were a younger nation.
Mhm.
Uh, this is about maybe 40 years ago, 30. 50 years ago, we were a
Yeah.
young nation, and it was Merdeka was extremely precious,
Mm-hmm.
was it not? It is
Yes.
still extremely precious. So that's why I think each time we celebrate or commemorate Merdeka Day or Malaysia Day,
Mm-hmm.
each generation has a responsibility to reflect what does independence mean to them, how much has it cost the earlier generation, how much
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice has there been, how much, people, yeah, we're always proud of the fact that we didn't go to war to achieve independence. But
Yeah.
then this is true.
Mm-hmm.
The fighting off of colonial power, as exemplified by the movie Mat Kilau and others of
Mm-hmm.
the same genre, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
showed to us how much was paid in terms of life and blood by the earlier generation.
Yeah.
So I think what happened was, and then the social contract was still fresh in people's minds. Many
Yeah.
people were just so grateful of the constitution, which allowed
Mm-hmm.
for freedom of religion, yeah, being
Mm-hmm.
practiced by those who are non-Muslims. And
Yeah.
I think the Malay Muslims, they not that they are not true to their promise, of accepting others today, but maybe we need to polish this from some more,
Yeah.
uh, and not say insensitive things about other people. This is very much in the Quran. Don't call people names.
Yes.
Uh, don't think bad of others. Yeah,
Yeah.
suul khatimah. That's not good. Yeah, husnuzan. We should
Yeah.
have husnuzan always. Yeah, think well of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, all this brings us to one dimension in here.
Yeah.
That the people in Malaysia, I think mostly, I think there's a very small percentage only who don't belong to any religion. If to be
Mm-hmm.
precise, 52% are Muslims, 19 are Buddhists, 9 are Christians, and so on. You can go down the list,
Yeah.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
this means that our traditional belief systems and values are strong, were
Yeah.
strong.
Mm-hmm.
Today, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's still strong, but then again, maybe it's focusing on other things at the expense. I mean, yeah, it's good to always good to be focusing more and more in
Mm-hmm.
terms of understanding. But
Yeah.
then again, don't forget there are rights of your neighbors upon you.
Yes.
And who are our neighbors?
Mm-hmm.
In the micro context, of course, they are your immediate neighbors who sit, living in the house next to yours at this moment. That's your
Yeah.
immediate neighbor. In a bigger context,
Mm-hmm.
we are neighbors to the other non-Malays and non-Muslims, and vice versa. Do they have
Yeah.
rights on us? Yes, they do. Are
Yeah.
we giving them their rights? And then please don't retaliate by saying, but they are not giving us our rights.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't behave like that. Because I think if you're brought up nicely in your traditional belief system, you will not be thinking and acting like that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you be very humbly, very, what do you call it, dengan cara yang terhormat in Malay, right? We would like to
Yes.
perceive ourselves, our colleagues, maybe of the same race, of the different race. Can we do better on this score?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when there was this conference on social cohesiveness, as you know, recently in Singapore, about 2 weeks ago, we
Mm-hmm.
were there, some of us, and what they did is what they're doing is there is a deliberate effort to create or to enhance contact between people. I think we
Mm-hmm.
try to do that in Malaysia also in the housing scheme, in the housing
Yes.
area. We make sure
Mm-hmm.
that there's a mix,
Yeah.
there's a mix, and that people are not to say forcibly encountering each other. They are not being forced to encounter each other, but they are in a way aided in terms of their communicating with one another, facing one another, having to be in the company of one another. Does
Mm-hmm.
this happen in Malaysia? Yeah, it does, but not in I think, over conscious kind of manner. We do
Yeah.
mix at work, right? But some
Yeah.
places of work we don't have. At school, in the marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
in the public transport systems.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some research has been carried out. How much are people satisfied in this? I think this goes inside that happiness index study carried
Yeah.
out. So
Mm-hmm.
people are quite satisfied. But then again, we are not, like you said, shouting it out loud that
Mm-hmm.
unity today is like unity when it was when we were young. My generation was younger. It is not to that level. But can we bring it to that level? But another thing is maybe we can be close, not in a similar manner.
Mm-hmm.
There's mangosteen trees to climb anymore. I mean, not many left. So
Yeah.
maybe people can be close in the social media, through
Mm.
the social media, through their organizing of programs in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, uh, through the sharing of celebrations of Hari Raya and stuff like that. And I think we should not be over apologetic, over dramatic, over sensitive when it comes to uh, telling people what are the pantang larang. You know, if I come to your
Mm.
house, so sorry, I hope you don't mind. I have to have this, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So just come out forthrightly with our friends. I don't think it's
Mm.
an issue at all. And then I think the social capital that we have robbed ourselves of is
Mm.
precisely this thinking well of others, bersangka baik
Yeah.
dengan orang. We always
Yes.
think, yeah, having this the superiority complex. Oh, they cannot possibly understand why we have to do this. After all, they are
Mm.
not like. So this, maybe we think of others that way, and others will think of us in the same way. So what happens? There'll be, kita difarakkan. There'll be distance between us,
Mm.
and absence. What do you call it? Uh, People say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but in this
Yeah.
sense, it doesn't. Yeah, and even when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam first entered Madinah, I think
Mm.
we
Yeah.
there's a hadith, isn't it? And he said, give the salam, feed people. I mean, share your food, and maybe there were other things as well. So are
Mm.
we doing this? And giving the salam means wishing in conventional language is wishing others well, is it not?
Yeah.
In the
Peaceful. Yeah.
tradition, it's actually praying for the well-being of other people.
Yeah.
But we still have issues of like, can non-Muslims say the salam also? So I don't know. We leave that to the experts.
Yeah.
But if the answer is yes or if the answer is no, we should be very clear about it. Why?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that if the answer is no, why?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, why? So
Mm-hmm.
I think what's happening is we have guidelines that say no. More often than not, they don't celebrate. They don't tell people. We don't share what is the yes, what is the
Mm-hmm.
allowable. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about the non-allowables.
Mm-hmm.
So you put yourself in others' position. This is what is called empathy, right? So you look
Yes.
at this particular group, it's always the no's that is coming out of them. There's no the positives is not coming out. They're not being pulled into the embrace, into the warmth, into the comradeship, the collegiateship of our group. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this is the issue. And
Yeah.
people speak. Last night, I think I saw a program on television that speaks about food. Eating together is a way, is a small step in terms of making people come together. So let's work on this kind of strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, even in your what said is what you have shared and said is right, because even in the Quran it says
Yeah.
get to know one another,
That's right.
lita'arafu. I mean, you
That's
need to
right.
know one
Correct.
another.
Surah
And
Al-Hujurat, right? And
yes.
that's a surah. That is an ayat in the Quran about that.
Mhm.
Don't call
Yeah.
people names, and then the best are you and the best of taqwa. And what does taqwa means?
Mm-hmm.
Respectful of what Allah says. And what does Allah says? Have good relationship with people. And
Yeah.
don't forget, Islam is Rasulullah is rahmatan lil alamin. Are we
Yes.
projecting that message? Are we
Mm-hmm.
projecting that message? And what was his akhlaq? His
Yes.
uncle Abu Talib,
Mm.
was not, couldn't say the Shahada before he passed away. Not, but yet, what was Rasulullah's akhlak and behavior towards his uncle? We,
Yeah.
we all know this story. So what lessons for us today? So I think
Mm-hmm.
we need more humility, Annie. I think with due
Yeah.
respect, yeah, I think we need more humility towards Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. We need to have a lot of gratitude and syukur that our
Mm-hmm.
neighbors, no matter what we think, yeah, our neighbors are not causing us problems. I mean, not major problems.
Yeah.
And if there are the economic disparities, let's keep going. Let's keep working on it. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's our ways of approaching people is that well, I mean, some people may not like when we speak this way, but because people still speak about ketuanan Melayu and all of this, yeah. But I think you have to be a good tuan. You can continue to be a tuan, but there is a good tuan. There's a tuan that also people are not happy with, and then
Mm-hmm.
the measure of this is also our racial,
Mm-hmm.
intra-religious relationships. Is it that marvelous?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that beautiful? Is it that peaceful?
Yeah.
So let's be. We are 65 years old as a nation.
Mhm.
So how should a 65-year-old think as compared to a 30-year-old or 45 year old person, again, I say this with the greatest of respect, yeah, and humility, and I hope our friends who are listening will empathize with us, will join us in these efforts. Let's spread goodwill, let's spread the rahmah, let's spread the mercy that our religion stands for. Yeah, inshallah.
InsyaAllah, insyaAllah, Datuk. Right. Thank you, Datuk, for our first part of the conversation ataupun forum on the topic social cohesion with the Malaysia. So insyaAllah, in our second part, Datuk, next week we will discuss about this particular topic, in depth, and then we'll understand better about the challenges to
Yeah.
social cohesion. You have mentioned a few briefly, but I think we would like to elaborate on that. Thank you again to our
Thank you
guest,
so much.
Professor Dr. Azizan Baharudin, who agreed to join us and talk about this topic. With that, I thank you to my producer Hajah Mazina Ismail, and inshallah see you again next week on Open Forum every Sunday at 5 p.m. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam
taala wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you